Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here. A quick preview and prediction for Joyce versus Bryant Jennings. Now this fight is on the undercard of Daniel Dubois versus Nathan Gorman. And I've got to say, I believe this is a decent little step up fight for Joyce. But ultimately, I believe this is a fight where Joyce should prevail. Stylistically, I don't really believe this is a bad matchup for him. And not only that, he is the slightly younger guy. He's certainly more fresh, and he has a lot more ambition than Bryant Jennings. I think Bryant Jennings is coming towards the end of his career, and he's looking for those last few paydays. Whereas Joyce is still, he's less than 10 fights in. He's 9-0. He still has a lot of hunger and ambition, but I believe that's faded away for Bryant Jennings. Like I said, I believe he's sticking around for a few more paydays. Not only that, Bryant Jennings is the shorter, smaller guy. Joyce is bigger, he's heavier, he's taller, and I believe he's physically stronger. I'm not really sure whether Bryant Jennings has enough to offset the pressure of Joyce. Joyce is a come-forwards fighter. I actually think coming forwards, his foot speed isn't that slow. He closes the distance fairly quickly, and he then gets on top of you and starts to outwork you, outland you, and he starts to beat you up. Joyce's style is based on physicality, work rate, punch output, aggression, strength. He relies on his physical assets. And I just believe he's got a bad style for Bryant Jennings. Bryant Jennings, like I said, he is a shorter guy. Now, he does have a longer reach. I believe Bryant Jennings' reach is like 84 inches in comparison to Joyce's 80 inches. So although Jennings does have a 4-inch reach advantage, I really don't think that's enough to offset the pressure of Joyce. Bryant Jennings can throw out a nice jab. He can box on the back foot. He does have nice skills. He can box. But I don't believe he's got enough to offset Joyce ultimately. Maybe Bryant Jennings could mess around Joyce for the first 2 to 3 rounds. But I honestly don't believe he's got enough to keep Joyce off of him for a long period of time. Eventually, I expect Joyce to close that distance, to get on top of Bryant Jennings and have success. And when Joyce gets on top of Bryant Jennings, I do worry about how Bryant Jennings will react. Because like I said earlier, I get the impression that Bryant Jennings has lost the passion for the sport. I get the impression that he's sticking around for a couple of more paydays. And if that's the mindset he is in, Joyce is not the type of fighter you want to be fighting. A guy who's hungry, a guy who's willing, a guy who's aggressive, a guy who has high punch output. I just don't think Bryant Jennings these days can live with somebody like Joyce. Not that I rate Joyce particularly highly, or not that I'm sold on him. I'm not really sure on Joyce quite yet. But I just believe at this time, he has too much for Bryant Jennings. And even stylistically, I don't think it's a great matchup for Bryant Jennings. So ultimately, as you guys can tell, I am favouring Joyce. I expect him to win this fight. If I were a betting man, I would say, Joyce gets a stoppage in rounds 8, 9 or 10 maybe, towards the end of a fight. Once the accumulation has started to take its toll, that's when I think Joyce will get the stoppage. So we're picking Joyce. We're picking Joyce by stoppage. But ultimately, in comparison to Joyce's previous competition, it certainly is still a step up. So don't get it twisted. I've not got any problem with this fight at all. Like I said, it's still a step up. Bryant Jennings is still the best guy Joyce has fought to date. So we'll see how he gets on with this challenge. I've actually seen a few people online pick Bryant Jennings for the upset, but I'll be honest, I really can't see it. Share your thoughts below. How do you see this fight going? Are you like me and believe Joyce will have too much? Or are you one of those people who are picking Bryant Jennings in the upset? Share your thoughts below. Peace.